So it looks like it's been a while for most, so that's awesome. Thanks for joining. This is a Nevada Department of Wildlife Conservation Education program. When we all went to online for COVID, that we started doing a bunch of webinars. And you guys are our first fish camp, virtual fish camp attendees. So thank you so much for joining. This is awesome. I'm so excited that you guys get all this information all in 1 week. It'll also all be recorded, so you'll get to watch all these later on if you miss one. Nicole, our awesome moderator for all of these this week as well, just shared our e-regulations, which is our fishing guide that we print each year. We have them online for you. You can just click on the link in the chat and download that if you want to. I also recommend go ahead and do it, and then you have it later on if you aren't going to read right now. So this is a family, just a couple disclaimers. It is a family-friendly PG program. We won't tolerate any inappropriate behavior or bad language. So please use the Q&A box. It definitely helps us out. We will also have the chat box open for general discussion. And as long as you follow these guidelines, you can hang out with us today. Here's my contact information. You can take a picture of it and feel free to email me anytime. Call if you have any more questions. If your kid's school wants to do a fish camp too, we can definitely do that for them. And my email address is also on the second camera. So while you're setting up your screens, if you're on a computer, you have a few options. You can have the PowerPoint on one side and then have my screen and other screens on your right. So if you just want one screen, you just want to click the one window. If you want a couple screens, which will be me and the not tying screen, that'll be two, or a gallery view. So what we'll go over today is a few things that you need to know before you go out fishing in Nevada. Some knots, some bobbers, some slip sinkers, and basic rigs that are good knowledge. They are generally considered bass rigs, but in that setting is also just basic rigs, either if you're going to do bait fishing or if you're going to add on a lure. So all those are really good to know and can be used across the board, not just for bass fishing. So a couple years ago, we made everything really simple. So if you haven't gotten a fishing license yet, all you have to do is go to ndowlicensing.com. Let me get my laser pointer going for you. So ndowlicensing.com. That is our website for all licensing. Eventually, all of our information will be able to be in that one platform. Including like if you volunteer with us or anything like that. So also, when you get your fishing license, it includes trout stamps, 2 pole fishing license add-ons that we used to have to buy separate, or like dual waters for interstate waters like we have for Tahoe or the Colorado River. Get my fit trout sticker out of the way there. Also, different waters have different rules. Some waters you can wade and fish in, some you cannot do that at all. Most urban ponds you cannot get in the water at all. Also, the urban ponds are limited fishing, so there's only 3 fish limits in most of the waters. Definitely double check those regulations before you go out. And if you are 12 to 17, you definitely want a youth license, which is only $16, and that includes everything as well. All right. So when you're adding on a knot, a bobber, setting up your rigs, you definitely just want to have a good multi-tool, which is your basic tackle. With your tackle box, you'll have your hooks, your weights, and some slip sinkers. And I will actually grab my tackle box when we get going on the other stuff as well. When I get a multi-tool for fishing, I definitely make sure pliers are on the end. We have a lot of bluegill out here, so for me, the most beneficial thing is a nice little plier that will fit in my back or front pocket on the end with the little clippers in the middle, and you can see that here. So I definitely like the pliers on the end, and that helps me get the hook off the fish's lip a lot easier. And then I can also cut line a lot easier right here if I have to. These also, you can see the spring hinge. Those honestly make it so much easier when you're in a hurry and if you're fishing with kids or your siblings, if you're one of the kids that are on here watching. So I was really excited to hear a lot of kids were going to log on after school. So it's really, really cool to see everybody on here today. All right, so the knots we're going to go over are arbor knot, and then just like you think like a arbor reel, so that is your main knot that you need to tie that line on. And then you have your Palomar knot. It's just a nice heavy duty knot. Uni knot, that one also goes into the double uni knot that when you need to tie two lines together. So this is the first half of that. It's also a nice strong one, especially if you have bigger water or a heavy moving water. And the improved clinch knot is mainly that basic fisherman's knot. Nice tight around your other line, back through, and then that way it is double, the tension's double done. Lost our words on that. All right, so for our uni knot. So what I do recommend is most of you are probably on your computers. I should have probably added that as another poll question. What you can do if you're on the computer, or if you actually are watching on your phone, is I believe you can tap different windows. So I would recommend putting the uni knot to the side in just a moment. And then you can actually move the line between me talking and the presentation. There's a little line in between there, and you can make that window bigger, because my demo window is going to be, instead of me, it's going to be my hands. And you can actually make it more side by side, so you can have the full instructions on one side and then the knot on the other. So I'm going to describe it real quick, and then we'll demo it with the instructions on the side. So I have another screen for that. So with this one, we're going to create a knot around the line, and then we're going to put another knot in this tag end. This is the extra end of the line. So this is going to be the line that the fishing pole is connected to. Then the line comes out and goes to the end, which is the tag end. This one has the knot to hold it, but that way, with this knot over the main line, you can actually slip it down and sink it into the reel. And we do already have a video online on our YouTube page under the playlists and webinars. And I already have one on there where I do take a reel and do the arbor knot right to it. So you can look that one up later as well. All right. So there's a lot more instructions to it, and I think it almost makes it a little more complicated. So we'll go ahead and go to the next slide and get set up for that. Let me get this line going. So this is where you'll want to make it side by side with, there we go. And then we'll spotlight my hands. There we go. And again, you can make this screen that I'm waving at you with almost as big as the instructions, and then that way you can see both a little bit bigger. All right, so this is going to be my main line. that is connected to the fishing pole. I'm going to have that hanging down, but I definitely want to have enough room up top here. So this is going to be my tag end. I have the white sticking out there for you. So actually, I'm actually going to grab this for you. And this actually will make it easier for you guys to visualize. I'm going to do the 350 cord on the reel. All right, so you have a reel. You're going to tie on new line. You're going to put it around. This is the tag end here, right? And then there's the main line. So normally this line is going to be connected to the full reel of fishing line. We're going to actually tie a knot. We're going to tie a knot around this main line. And definitely give yourself room. So there we go. So we tied the knot over here. Pull it up a little bit. Put a knot in the end, in the tag end here. And then that way when you cinch it down, it stops it. Obviously, if we're using fishing line, it's going to be a little easier. And then you can hear that actually getting tighter on there. And that's it. And then now you can fully reel your line onto the reel. All right. Anyone want to see it again? Or are we going to YouTube it and hit pause later? Feel free to put a comment in the chat. Any questions about anything too? Were you able to see it okay? All right. So we will go ahead and move on. If there are any questions about video or anything, let me know. All right, next one's going to be the Palomar knot. This one's fun too. So we'll go back to our makeshift fishing hook. And with this one, it actually can withstand a full 20 pounds. So this is the one for down south or up north if you get that big striped bass, walleye, something like that. This is the one that's going to keep you from losing that awesome fish. It's a little bit stronger because you're doubling it through the eye. You go over the knot and let your hook hang because you're actually going to go back over the bend of the hook. Moistening the line, not very sanitary, and definitely don't use rubbing alcohol for that. But maybe some of the water at the pond to get it a little wet. That actually will help tighten the line down a little bit. And then that way you can cut off the excess line, but it pulls it down a little bit tighter too. And thank you, Nicole. Nicole just shared animatedknots.com where a lot of we share the learning tools that we use for learning tools, diagrams and stuff are from there. Animated Knots literally will walk you through it, and you can pause and stop with those videos too. It's honestly the best. And they have an app. All right. So this is what we're going to have it look like at the end. All right, so that's what we're going to do with this next one. And I'll spotlight my hands again. So main line back here. Tag end up here. And we're going to create a bend, and that bend is going to go through the eye of the hook, about 4 to 6 inches. So I go about halfway with where my tag end is. Then you're just going to create a knot, a regular knot above it, but the knot also has to be long enough to go around the bend. Sorry, I pulled back too far. Around the bend of the hook. Okay, I'll go back since I think I pulled off screen there for a minute. So definitely have plenty of room. I'll back up here. Doubled it up, pulled the fishing line down, almost 2/3 actually, because my hook's so big. And create a knot above. Make sure that this loop is long enough, and I'm holding the tag end, is long enough to go around the bend of this full hook. And then we're going to pull it up and tighten it down. A little harder with the cord, a little easier with the fishing line. And then you can see how tight that makes that. Make sure it's up above. Want it all nice and tight. Tend it down. There we go. And then you can pull test. And then you would cut this off with your multi-tool so that it doesn't look like an extra tail for the fish to chase. We want them focused on this hook and bend part. And then that's that one. Great. Any questions there?
Abby, when you're going over these knots, can these knots be used on multiple rods, like a bait caster, a spin caster, and a fly fishing setup? Or are some knots specific to certain kinds of rods?
That's a good question. Honestly, so it's going to be mainly for spin cast, bait cast, spinning rods. So your basic. For fly rods, Jan's actually creating some videos for that too. And for the fly rod, you'll want to use the improved clinch knot. That'll be at the end. And actually you could use the Uni Knot. These first 2 knots are mainly for spinning and spin cast and bait caster line. Thank you. Good question, Nicole. All right. And then if we're good there, we'll go ahead and go on to the next one. And tie this one. And while you're, if you're at home for extra time and are wanting to practice your knots, you can get like a nice extra thick fishing line. Put it in both cameras, depending on which one you guys are focused on. And it's a little, this one has the green in it, which is great for a lot of our waters that get so warm. It's a little easier to see too when you're tying it. You can tie with just some yarn. And then you saw that I got this 550 cord, or I actually think I found it in the camping supply department. We got it for one of our instructor academies because we had to tie down our tent and tarp because of the heavy winds and snow. And went with bright orange. And then this I just made out of a coat hanger and cut it with a PVC cutter and then screwed in an extra eyelet I had in our extra tackle box. So that's always an option too. All right, so this one's even stronger, the Uni Knot. Also the hangman's knot or Duncan knot. So we're going to take the line, go through the eye and double it back, and this will give you a circle. with that tag end around the double, tie around the main line 6 times and pull through the loop. When you moisten the line and pull your main line tight, that'll give it that extra strength. And when I say moisten, I recommend maybe just a little bit of the pond water so that we're not touching our mouths, right? And then finish by swiveling the main line to slide the knot down a little bit further. So I'll show you how to do that. All right, so here's our directions. Like that. Oh. All right. So the easiest way, make sure your eyes through the loop. You have it laid out. We're actually going to go backwards. Try to do it just like on here. Easier to lay it down, especially when you're using extra big hooks. I'll go here. And then as we go back, do it this way so that you have the loop back here. We want to get a little longer. And then you're going to want to turn just like we do with like a fisherman's knot or something else like that. Go through 4 to 6 times. Give yourself plenty of line. I'm going to do one more. Hold that line up and start cinching down. And pull down, and you can see how that gives it that hangman's knot. Hold tight, and you can see how strong that is. And then go ahead and pull this in too. And this is where you would wet it and pull tight. There you go, all done. Do not think a 20-pound fish is getting off that one either. All right, and then we just did the improved clinch knot instructions, so I'll untie this. And I guess you guys are up for it in the chat. What fish do you mainly go after? What are your favorite fish to fish for? Lots of trout, bass too, awesome. All right, awesome. So yeah, some of those trout can get pretty big too. So you definitely want a good knot if you're on a stream and that trout's running on you down the stream. So these are great knots to tie your flies onto too. So so yeah, when I was saying fly line, I'm always picturing the line to leader to your tippet, but the fly to the tippet, yeah, I don't see why you couldn't use some of these lines for that, definitely. As long as it fits in that eye of those some of those itty bitty flies, it's kind of hard to get any extra line. I would say the Palomar knot would probably be the hardest to do with the fly. All right, so the improved clinch knot, the one that most people know, and for our beginners, go through the eye. We have our tag end over here. We have our main fishing line down here. You just go around. So actually for this one, the easiest, and they even made a tool that holds your hook for you, is I actually twist the hook. I twist the hook, and you can see how it creates the waves or the bends in the line. And those are those overlaps. That's what's going to hold the line on. And we go through like 4 times. And we take our tag end, and the part, the bigger line, go through the hole above the eye. And when we do that, it creates a loop on the side. and we pull the tag end up through the side loop, hold it up tall, and push this down. Actually, I think the line ended up going upside down on me. But when we cinch it down, we're going to start that one over again. I did flip it upside down and it got all confused. All right. So normally I would twist it, but since we're using the big cord, I'm just going to go over so you can see the waves, and it's a little tighter because this is what we want to tighten down on. So 1, 2, 3, 4, we'll go ahead and go 5 and take that tag end into the hole above that 5. And then there's that hole that we created. Go back up through that, hold the tag end, just hold it, don't pull too hard, and take that main line and push down. Because you want to keep this tall and taut, and pull down. And this hole on the side, when it's with fishing line, it's definitely tighter. That is going to be your extra strength there. And then you can even put, if you have enough line here, you can put a little knot, just like you did with the Arbor knot, on the end, and that keeps it from sneaking out that side hole too. So it's the double improved clinch knot. There we go. We have another awesome knot to keep those fish from running away from us on. Bass are a lot of fun, and they are tricky sometimes when they'll get it in the, you'll get a good hook on them in the mouth and they wiggle away from the hook somehow. All right, so go into bobbers. So give me 1 minute because I think my kid took my bobber. I'll be right back. Literally 1 minute.
One way to tell if your line broke or your knot is bad, when you pull your line in, if the knot is bad, instead of having a clean break at the end, it'll be like a curly cue, almost like a little pigtail. It looked like it curled a lot, and that means your knot came untied. If it broke because of a weak spot from your fish, a lot of times what you have is just a nice clean break there. After you catch a fish, one of the things you may want to do is to go ahead and run your fingers, put the line between your thumb and forefinger and go up and down. And if you feel a nick, that's a weak spot. So then cut above that, retie your hook or your lure on so that you don't have any weak spots and you lose a lot less fish that way.
Different bobbers are good for different waters. It's honestly the best way to think about it. Especially for summer months where we have a lot of weeds, the bobbers will keep your hooks out of the weeds, and usually if you're shore fishing, out past the weeds. So it's actually pretty awesome. So I'm gonna keep my hand spotlighted now. Side by side. So here's a great example. So I learned a couple years ago, there's some awesome guys that fish for carp, and they use these monster long bobbers, and they've actually like remade them differently. So some of these are really old types of bobbers. And then, and you can, obviously they're wooden. So yeah, these are the original ones. Now we make them plastic. And then you have the clip on the top for the line and then on the bottom. And this also will affect your line in the water. So you want to make sure it's as straight as possible. So So I'll show you this one real quick. So you always press the metal on the bottom, push up through the top, pop that line out, and same for the bottom. All right. So what's important is to keep your line straight when it's in here. Get up a little bit. So I always start at the top. It's easier to visualize for me. And if it's like windy or there's a lot of weeds or you might be going for a big fish, I definitely double it up. So I'll go around the metal. So I'll go once and then push up again. Hard to show, but make sure it goes around so that it is all the way around at least once. All right, so that comes in and that's going to keep it nice and straight. And then so that the bobber is smooth looking and so it just looks like it's just sitting there. When you pull it down to go around the bottom, push the metal up, go around again. And pull down. And that way you can visualize a nice straight line through the bobber. And then you can put your, I could help with this one. You can put your swivel on. So now you can switch out. You can switch out and just add a lure, or you can add your line with a hook. Okay. And then to show another bobber, I don't get tangled up there. Other ones are the water bobbers are really good and popular. Good one, these water ones. So you put these in the water, let them fill up with water, and then you just put the line through. So these aren't as adjustable. You have to put the line actually through the top and the bottom. And there's also thingamabobbers for fly fishing, since some of you guys brought up trout. And those look like the red and white one. You can just pop those on and off your line too. Those are always, I love the name, same thing about bobbers. All right, and then also, yeah, the bobbers come in different sizes. So I even have like a small one. So depending on what you're fishing with and where you want your bait in the water, you would either want to add a little bit of a weight below the bobber too. If you don't, and you do kind of want it to float a little higher, then you can just put the worm on and that should be heavy enough. But if you do need more weight and you do want the presentation to be smoother and just hanging in the water more casually, I would put a little weight on here. And then this one. And that's where we will be going next anyways with the slip sinkers. I like these bell weights also for the vegetation we have out here. They smooth or they slide through the water and the weeds a little bit easier. And then put your slip shot. And the intention of this is to be able to adjust. So it'll go up and down on the line. And that way it pulls through the weeds and you don't get stuck as much. And then we would tie the hook on or the swivel down here. So hook mainly. Right. And then we start going into the rigs. So we'll go over slip sinkers and basic rigs real quick. All right, So these can be used for everything from bass to trout to catfish, all depending on, it's mainly depending on the body of water that you're fishing. So this is for bait fishing. You'd put your weight down here, and this is kind of like a Carolina rig too. So you put your weight, and then you put your barrel swivel, which we also have video on Facebook of that. One of the instructors in the Western region made. And you would tie your line to the barrel swivel, and then that way you can cut and separate as needed depending on what you're going to put on the leader below and the hook of your choice. So if you're going for a bottom feeder like catfish, carp, anything like that, you would want more of like a circle hook, and then that way it actually grabs their tough lips a little bit easier as well. That's a basic example of that.
Can I add something to this, Abby?
Definitely. Thanks, Joe.
So this rig is also can be used for trout. If you're using power bait and you're fishing in some of our urban ponds, power bait likes to float. So when you put your power bait on your hook, it'll actually float up off the bottom. It'll float generally about a foot and a half. And I know in some of our urban ponds and even some of our lakes, this is very, very effective when they're not feeding the surface.
Good point. Yeah, so yeah, I did forget that part. Very good point. So yeah, so you can see how light and fluffy the power bait is, right? So definitely it's good when your bait actually goes up above the ground, even for catfish. All right, so basic rigs, we kind of went through those with the bobbers. Then there's also the option of a three-way fishing rig. I'll kind of explain those. Those can actually get kind of messy. I don't totally recommend that one, but I have definitely seen some success with it with catfish. And then we do have a 2-hook limit. So that's also one of the options. And then the cork fishing rig, that just helps it float as well, a little bit off the bottom. So it'll still sink, but it won't be right off the bottom. So these are basic bass rigs, but the cool thing I liked about these to show you guys is where the weight placement is. So this one's kind of like I was showing you, and why I said kind of like a Carolina rig is you have your weight, you have your barrel swivel, or your slip sinker, and then you have your swivel that holds your hook, or you can just tie the hook right on with your plastic or your creature. And also with these, I wanted to say is that the hook is hiding inside the plastic here, and that way when that aggressive predatory fish bites your hook, it still gets hooked, but you don't have to worry about the weeds and the aquatic vegetation as much. Big problem in the south more than the north with our waters heating up so fast. And then you can also do it without a weight, but this one's definitely going to float up a lot more because it's plastic and rubber. And then the Texas rig, this one's really fun to watch in the water because with the weight right above the hook, it literally dances in the water. So, I mean, that's up to you too with your presentation, with your reel, but as you bounce it, it literally will bounce through the water and through the plants, enticing them. And then the NECO rig, this one's good I would go with this one a little bit later on, but sometimes they're just chasing that movement, and so the NECO rig will look like a worm moving through the water a lot easier. All right, so the main thing is to remember is where the weight is going above your swivels, and if you want it a little bit off the ground, you don't want your weight this far down, but this will definitely get it to hit in between the rocks or between the bushes. So just remember that when you are placing your weight. All right, and that pretty much wraps it up for this part. So be an ethical angler while you are out and about. If you have any questions, start thinking of them. Since this is mainly mine, this is one of my closing slides for Southern region waters, but anywhere that there's a nice fishing pier, just be aware of others around you. City park ponds, we all have at least an urban pond or a pond or a lake or a reservoir. And then just be cautious of people around you there too, because there are walkways around many of the waters. And then the Willow Beach fishing pier is probably one of the biggest ones I've seen outside of ocean, like California shoreline. And these are all families that went out together. So fish responsibly is the main point of all that. Respect your waters. And by that, clean up after yourself and others if you have to. You don't want those fish or birds to be eating the garbage. And let them go and grow. So if you're not going to eat it, know your limits, catch and release it, or selective harvest is really neat too. And that is eating those middle-sized ones, keep the brooding stock that are going to reproduce really well for those waters. And then let the little ones go and get bigger and grow nice and strong so that they're the next generation of fish. Share your passion with others, like we try to do with you guys, and keep getting more and more anglers out. There's also an awesome first catch for certificate. So if anyone is new to fishing, please let us know. We'll help you get that certificate from takemefishing.org. Make sure you have your fishing license on your phone or on you and is presentable for a game warden that's out and about. Pack it in, pack it out. Don't guarantee that the trash can is available and ready. Always have an extra garbage bag. I know I have a pocket in my tackle bag just for extra bags as needed. You never know what you're going to find out there. And be safe. Last night was very windy. This cold weather was blowing in on us last night, so we didn't stay out as long, but we definitely were able to get a little bit in on an urban pond, but there was no way that Lake Mead was going to be possible with that open water and the wind conditions. And check the fishing reports. We do them every single week for you guys throughout all the regions, and they're there for you guys to use and know what's going on. So thank you. Thanks for coming to our presentation. Thank you, Joe, for your help today, and Nicole, as always. And we will be back at 4:30.